Kathy Hochul.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. Welcome to the IBW Local Tree Electrical Industry Training Center. It is great to share our space with so many representatives from state agencies, industry partners, elected officials, friends in labor, and environmental allies. Local 3 represents nearly 28,000 members in the electrical industry throughout the 5 boroughs of New York City, Westchester, and the tri-state area across all facets of the industry, including construction, maintenance, transmission and distribution, manufacturing and supply, renewable energy, and more. Local 3 and the IBW are committed to addressing the challenges of climate change head-on, ensuring that a just transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy takes place in a meaningful and successful way, with a skilled and professional union workforce who earn family-sustaining wages and benefits guaranteed by union contracts and project labor agreements. This transition and the work supported by our governor creates opportunities for the next generation of workers as well to join our diverse ranks alongside our apprentices that are here today. Where are my apprentices, by the way? Stand up. Take a look. Great. This is an important day for our industry, for union workers in the entire state of New York as we continue to lead the way in renewable energy and the just transition that is critical for our world and future generations. Because of this administration and the Biden administration as well, we will continue to work with our contractor and developer partners and allies in the environmental movement to make sure that the unionized construction industry shows up every day, works safely and efficiently, and does our part to create a more sustainable and brighter future. So welcome here this morning. Thank you very much, everybody. It's now my pleasure to introduce our governor, Kathy Hochul. She's the 57th and first female governor of New York. She began her career in public service on her local town board before becoming Erie County Clerk, a member of Congress, and Lieutenant Governor. Since being sworn into office in 2021, Governor Hochul has focused on making New York more affordable, more livable, and safer, including leading the path forward on New York's nation-leading efforts to address climate crisis while creating good union jobs. Governor Hochul has been a champion of the transition to a clean economy to protect future generations of New Yorkers. Please join me in welcoming our governor, Governor Kathy Hochul.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chris. If you want to know what a thriving green economy looks like, let us listen. The answer, my friends, is blowing in the wind. Sorry, Bob Dylan. Less than 2 weeks ago, I announced a 10-point action plan to boost our already thriving, large-scale renewable energy industry. I said step 1, those of you who read it, was to announce an historic suite of awards. I'm proud to say we're keeping that promise from 2 weeks ago. And today, the state of New York is announcing the largest investment in clean energy in U.S. history, right here, right now. Thank you. 3 offshore wind projects and 22 renewable projects that'll generate enough power to power 2.6 million homes. Our green energy future is now the green energy present. We're not waiting any longer. This is an historic investment to demonstrate our full commitment to renewables and this particular energy, this form of energy. And I thank all of you for being here today at this magnificent site, a place that Chris and members of this local dreamed about for a long time. And I'm told it's the best place in New York City to watch fireworks. Extraordinary view. A place where on any given day there's 1,000 people, the apprentices who made a decision to change their lives and their family lives by saying, I want a job that's going to be there for the long term. Unlike the jobs that my dad and grandpa had at a steel plant where the jobs all went offshore, this is not going anywhere but off the shores of Long Island. And that is our commitment. That is our commitment. So I thank Local 3. I thank Chris Erickson for his support for all these initiatives and transitioning to this form of work. This is a form of work that's going to be there for generations to come, and it starts in places like this magnificent training center. I also want to give a shout out to Mario Salento where are you, Mario Salento, the whole head of the New York State AFL-CIO, whose dedicated commitment day and night to making sure that New Yorkers have good energy jobs and making sure that the union movement is at the forefront. So thank you, Mario. Thank you. Gary LaBarbera, thank you for also helping to train these individuals and all the different facets. You know, we need partners like you, so I thank you for your support. And John Durso from the Long Island Labor Federation, let's wish him a happy birthday while we're at it here today. From my administration, I want to acknowledge Doreen Harris, who's been an extraordinary champion. Where's Doreen? Doreen, thank you. And Basil Sagos, NYSERDA, and DEC, Basil Sagos as well, great leaders. All the members of my administration, I thank them. Julie Tai, you are a legacy maker. You know, the work that you have done in this state will have effects that are felt for generations, but we're feeling them right here and now. So thank you for your voice of advocacy, Julie Tai. Ann Reynolds, the Executive Director of ACE New York, ACE. Do you go by ACE or ACE? What's your preference? ACE, okay, we got the ace in the hole over here. And thank you for representing this industry that's so important to us. I see, is Kevin Parker here? Kevin? All right, Kevin's got a nice seat waiting for him. Dee Dee Barrett's here, Kevin Law. I think Julie Wan is here as well. Julie, well, anyhow, those of you who are here are going to have a great time. I'm sorry about those who didn't make it. But also we have a special guest who I'll be introducing in a couple minutes. President Joe Biden is so committed to this effort that he wanted to make sure that his top energy advisor, his climate advisor, Ali Zaidi, would be joining us here in person today. You'll be hearing from him in a couple of minutes. Let's give him a round of applause for the great work he does. We just saw him last month. He's here at all these major announcements because they're happening here and nowhere else. Let's just get that out there. You might as well get an apartment here because we're just getting warmed up here. And we're proud because the Inflation Reduction Act is what provided New York the additional resources, the powerful tools to be able to take these bold steps. So state of New York is committed, but also having the resources from the federal government truly makes our job a lot easier. And it's also, as I mentioned, fitting that we're at this training center today where I saw incredible state-of-the-art opportunities for people to learn the best and how to be the best workers in this field. And so they'll be tapped. I guarantee you're all going to be in high demand as we continue to unleash this great industry. As we mentioned, the climate crisis is not some far-off threat we talk about. I think about the environment a lot as someone who grew up basically in a pretty toxic area. The Bethlehem steel plant was close by, and at night we'd see the discharge look like molten lava to me as a little kid going into Lake Erie, one of the great freshwater bodies of water on our planet, and we would swim in it while they were making the rounds dumping every night. The skies were not blue, they were orange because that was being emitted from all the smokestacks, and everybody was working there. My dad in the blast furnace, ramping the coke ovens. I mean, everybody was working. Nobody knew any better. And we felt the effects for a long time until people became enlightened and realized that mankind's assault on Mother Nature had to stop. And we have stopped it. But now we embrace the opportunity to use our wonderful assets including the wind, to help transition us into a much cleaner future for our children. And we have a responsibility. We see what's already happening. Temperatures of the water are rising, sea levels are rising, and we've witnessed firsthand the storms are getting far more severe. I can't tell you how many emergency declarations I've had to issue in the 2 years I've been governor. Record snow, 1,000-year flooding events. I said, who's tracking this for 1,000 years? I mean, but they tell me it's a 1,000-year flooding event. But even a couple years ago, every 2 years having a 100-year flooding event up in the Great Lakes and in the Hudson Valley, the North Country, all over New York City, seeing record rainfall. You can't say this is something that could happen in the future someday. The effects are being felt in the here and now. And it's only going to get worse because we didn't take these steps a number of years ago. And I think about the fact when I was a young staffer for a congressman right after Jimmy Carter initiated very leading initiatives, tax credits for renewable energy, for wind and solar. If they had not been repealed by the Ronald Reagan budget a year later, when I came to Washington, just imagine the world we live in today. That was many years ago. That would be the world we live in now. We'd have no fossil fuels. We'd be focused on clean energy right now. But we have some time to make up for now, and we have a lot of work to do. We have a strong commitment here in the state of New York. Every other state's watching. They want to know, can we do it here in New York State? And we will. We always dream the impossible, but we always make it look easy. That's what we do in New York. 70% of our electricity will come from renewable sources by 2030. That is a commitment by all of us. We will achieve that. A zero-emissions electric grid by 2040, and 85% reduction in statewide climate pollution by 2050. And I'm not afraid of those numbers. People say, oh, you're going to make it? Don't worry. I have the team, we have the commitment, we have the workers, we have the opportunities, and we have the will. That's what we have to have, with a will to just charge right through these obstacles. It's what we do every single day. And we have a bold agenda to match these commitments. And when we finish these projects, we'll generate 6.4 gigawatts of clean energy. Now, someone might say 6.4, doesn't 10 sound better? I'll tell you, it's better than nothing. That's a good number. That's a good number. That's enough to power, as I said, 2.6 million homes, or 12% of New York's energy needs right from these announcements today. This is one day's announcements. And that's the equivalent of taking 2 million cars off the roads. Think about your kids, grandkids yet to come, perhaps. They're going to be able to breathe cleaner air because of what we're doing here today. And it'll help children with asthma, a real problem we have here in New York City. And also, I love the economic impact of all these investments. I love the jobs they're creating. 25 projects we're announcing today will generate $20 billion in economic investment right here in the state of New York. $20 billion. You like that number, folks? That's pretty darn good. And how do you like the sound of 8,300 good-paying jobs to be able to support your families right here in New York? 8,300 jobs. It's a big smile from Gary and Mario and John. This, in fact, is one of the fastest growing job creators. This sector is. And that's why we're leaning so hard into it. And we expect it'll support over 600,000 jobs by the year 2050. And I have some other good news, another announcement to make. Now, last year in our state budget, I fought hard and was able to achieve an unprecedented $500 million in the state budget to support offshore wind manufacturing and supply chain products. And I thank the legislators who are at the forefront with me. Thank you. And our leaders in the Assembly and the Senate. Thank you. But that investment, and no other state made this kind of commitment, I said, this sounds great, but I'm not real excited about having to buy all the component parts overseas. We just saw what happened during the pandemic when our economy almost shut down, not just because of a global pandemic, a virus, but we also couldn't get chips from overseas producers, which is why we're investing so heavily into Micron, another topic, another day, but an exciting one. We also said, what about the turbines? What about the blades? I don't want to be waiting for them to come over from Germany if we have another problem and all the ships are stuck in port. That's going to cripple our industry before it even gets going. Let's make the component parts here in New York, creating jobs, economic investment. So, while we're at it today, of the $500 million, we're awarding $300 million in state funds to enable the development of 2 supply chain capabilities in the capital region. Henry Hudson discovered the value of the Hudson River. You can bring a lot of commerce. It's what changed the world and New York City, and it's many, many decades or centuries ago. We can use that waterway again. Manufacture up in our capital region. Bring the component parts down here. Manufacture them, get them offshore. It's brilliant, and that's exactly what we're doing today. We're leveraging that $300 million for nearly $1 billion in investments for these manufacturing projects. This is a good day, my friends, and they'll make the nacelles, which I have no idea what that is, but it sounds important. Actually, I do know. It's the part in the middle, the blades attached. Okay, we're making the blades. Okay, you also know what the blades look like. How about made in New York, stamped on the blades? Okay, I'm feeling good about that. And these turbines are as long as a football field, although I don't really want to talk about football today. Another story. Some Mondays are better than others. But it's exciting. I mean, can you literally feel the energy around this? And this will be the first time ever that these component parts we manufacture, not just in New York, but in the United States of America. We're bringing home the jobs. We're bringing home the manufacturing under President Biden and this administration. So we're truly launching a brand new industry here. Change is in the wind. It's coming. And it's our responsibility to make sure we get it right. Because we'll be judged by how we act in this moment. Do we have the courage, the will, put the resources behind us, and break through all barriers to get this done right? To think boldly and act boldly, and to seize this moment. The projects we're announcing today will do just that. It'll set us apart, and it'll help not just New York, but the nation's transition to clean energy, and will lead by example for others to follow. That's what New York always does. And I could not be prouder at this time to thank all of you for being part of making history. Congratulations. As I mentioned, it's great to have friends in Washington. New York has no greater friend than President Joe Biden, who has been there at all the significant announcements. I was just with the CEO of Micron Sunday. Oh, today's Tuesday, isn't it? Okay. Still feeling the loss of Sunday's games. I just sat down with him, and he talked about how President Biden was so important in championing legislation to make sure that we could manufacture chips, and Chuck Schumer and the two of them. But I said in New York State, we had to make sure we were competitive as well. This is what we're talking about, my friends. Partnerships where there were none before between the federal government, President Biden, his administration, and our administration. And I want to thank Ali Zaidi for being here to represent the president, but also for making the journey here so often. And I'll tell you, we're just getting started, so we're going to see you a lot more often. Ladies and gentlemen, Ali Zaidi, the President Biden's climate advisor.
Governor, thank you so much. I'm just sitting here beaming with Lake Erie pride. I grew up on, you could say, the wrong side of the border. But it's just so amazing to see what you've done over the last 2 years. You talked about thinking boldly and acting boldly, and I think that's your record. That is evidence, that's proof on the ground, and we are so grateful to be your partner in all of this. Under the governor's leadership, not only is New York taking the lead on clean energy, it's taking the lead on advanced manufacturing, from chips to technology hubs to the clean energy economy we're here celebrating today. It's particularly heartening to be in the House of Labor, to be able to celebrate what is an economy that is being built not just to put steel in the ground or in the offshore industry, steel in the water, but really steel in the spine of the American middle class. For decades, we've fundamentally disinvested in the American middle class. We've disinvested in our workers. Now is the time. We stand up not only for a cleaner energy economy, but for a fairer economy, an economy that works for everybody. And that is the promise and the commitment of Joe Biden. And I think you see that in the words that he says. You see it in the places that he goes. You see it in the actions that you take as president. But there's another place you can see it, which you might not look, and that's in the United States tax code. So when you, yeah, I look there. And, you know, what's remarkable in this moment, we're talking about the 6+ gigawatts that are going to get built. All of those projects will be eligible for up to a 50% tax credit from the federal government. But you don't get the government's money for free. If you want that 50%, you've got to manufacture that stuff here in the United States. If you want that 50%, you got to invest in the communities that have been left out and left behind. If you want that 50%, you got to pay people a prevailing wage. And those apprenticeships, 10% of those 10% of the labor hours that go into a project, they got to come from apprenticeships. So when we talk about the president's values, we talk about his vision for what a clean energy future looks like, don't just take him at his word. Take him at the tax code. Take him at the way the dollars are flowing, because in the Biden administration, every single penny is going to stand up to that proposition, that we can do this and do it in a way that puts steel in the ground, but steel that's got a Made in America stamped on it, that's put in the ground by union workers, paid a good wage, good benefits, and given the dignity and respect and the right to organize that they deserve. And we're going to reinvest and reinvigorate the American middle class all at the same time. And you know what's so exciting, the Gov talked about the manufacturing part of this story. And you look at where the steel is getting forged in West Virginia by steelworkers, where the ships are getting built in Texas, and we got the building trades doing that work, where the cords that are literally going to get installed here in South Carolina, and then here in New York, the nacelles and the blades. This is work that is reinvigorating our economy all across the country. We talk about offshore wind oftentimes, and it sounds like it's a coastal story. But the truth is, what's happening here in New York and all across the coasts is creating an industry in every single state across the country. 47 of them now with supply chain in the offshore wind industry. Over 4,000 contracts that have been signed to do the work of lifting up energy out of the oceans and onto our grid. That's tremendous. That's the power of New York's leadership being felt and cascading throughout the entire country. And again, it's no surprise that y'all are leading here. It's because of, frankly, the coalitions and the approaches and the playbooks that have been formed here in the state of New York. I've spent a bunch of time, to call out Gary, getting coached, that's the friendly term, of how you do this, of how you do this the right way, how you don't cut corners when you're putting the public dollars into the investment arena. And we've learned that lesson, of course, from the success of New York, but now we're learning that lesson nationally. We're taking it national. And the environmental movement here, I think, is a model for what and how you do the work, through and with partners in coalition. Julie, Ann, others, not just working with industry and labor, but with environmental justice, using this moment not just to build the future, but in many cases, to repair the past. That's a really, really important calling. So, look, we are incredibly excited about this announcement. But the thing I've learned from Kathy Hochul is every time you show up and you celebrate and you're surprised, you better get ready because there's probably more coming. We could not be a greater champion, a greater enthusiast for the work that's happening here. And let me just close out with my sort of reflection on this moment. You know, you've got young people across the country. I used to be young. It's kind of a funny joke. But truly, you got young people across the country who they're furious at decades of inaction on climate, but the more powerful sense that they feel is this sense of doom and despair. They've seen the skies turn orange. Here on the East Coast, they breathe in smoke into their lungs from wildfires burning miles away. They know people whose lives, their livelihoods, photo albums have washed away because of furious floods or hurricanes blowing through town. There's a lot of reason for doom and despair. But where we stand today, this is the opportunity that if we're serious, we can seize a new narrative, a new story, not just for all of us, but for our young people, a story of hope and possibilities. And it's a story of hope and possibilities that takes plans and turns it into projects, that takes work that needs to be done into good-paying, family-supporting jobs, that takes ideas that were pie in the sky and translates them into steel in the ground. You're doing that work. We could not be a more excited partner, a more fortunate partner. And the guy who sits in the room without walls in the Oval Office, he's got your back. He's your biggest champion. Thank you so much. And speaking of the House of Labor, Mario Salento, come on up.
Thank you, Allie. So first, really, on behalf of the 2.5 million members of the New York State AFL-CIO, and really all working men and women across this state, from the public sector and the private sector and the building trades, from Buffalo to Brooklyn to Long Island and everywhere in between, I want to say thank you, Governor. Thank you on behalf of the labor movement. Thank you for your commitment to this cause, and thank you for the commitment that you have always shown to working men and women throughout this state. Let's hear it for Governor Hochul. Thank you, Governor. Thank you. You know, the labor movement from the very beginning, we've always talked about being part of this effort to combat climate change and to actually win that battle. And we've said that we can be part of that battle, but simultaneously fight to ensure that we have good-paying, fair jobs that have fair wages and benefits and conditions of employment. We can do them both at the same time. And this announcement today is really the culmination of that. It is the first step in showing that we can achieve all of our goals at the same time, combat climate change and provide those good union jobs. And it's the first step because we know that with this project, it will be built and operated and maintained and manufactured by the most highly skilled, highly trained union workforce in this country. And our representatives are here today, and I thank you for that. And we also know this, that really today is about opportunity. And it's been mentioned. It's about the opportunity for a brighter future, for all of us who recognize the adverse impacts that climate change have on our daily lives. It's an opportunity for a better tomorrow. And for working men and women, it is the opportunity for a better economic life, a better economic future, to be able to better support yourself and your families, because we know that through these projects, we will have project labor agreements and labor peace agreements and prevailing rate and Buy New York and Buy American. And as a result, have that better economic future for our families to come. So really, Governor, today I want to thank you on two different levels. I want to thank you first as a New Yorker and as a parent. You know, my wife and I have 3 daughters. And I think with any parent, you see the future through the eyes of your children. And what we're talking about today and what you've announced today will give my daughters and their generation and generations to come the opportunity to have that brighter future, to have the opportunity to not do what we're doing right now. I think all of us, you know, we're in this routine now where we look at the 7-day forecast, the 10-day forecast, even a month down the line, and we say, you know, subconsciously, what havoc can this weather pattern have on our lives now? We live that every single day. And for what you're doing here today, Governor, you're giving my daughters and you're giving future generations the opportunity to not live like that, to really have that brighter, literally that brighter future moving forward. So thank you for that as a New Yorker and as a parent. And as president of the New York State AFL-CIO, Governor, I say this. We have always abided by in the labor movement, and Chris and Gary and John and Maddie and everyone here and Jen, all labor leaders here, we abide by the old adage that actions speak louder than words, because we hear a lot of words from a lot of people. We hear a lot of promises. But the reality is this, Governor. You take those words and you put them into action. And today's the most recent example of that. Through all of the labor standards and protections that I just mentioned that are included in these projects, you will in fact make the economic lives of working men and women in this state substantially better. And for that, Governor, I say on behalf of all of us, 2.5 million strong in the state, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your friendship. And I can tell you that we will always work with you, stand side by side with you every step of the way until we achieve our joint goals. Thank you very much, Governor. And it is my honor to introduce a friend of mine and the president of the New York League of Conservation Voters, Julie Tai.
Good morning, everyone. As Mario mentioned, I'm Julie Tai. I'm president of the New York League of Conservation Voters, and I'm so delighted to be here this morning. Thank you, Ali, for all that President Biden is doing to support climate action and what you've done here for New York yourself not too long ago in passing the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. It's really an exciting day in New York State, and I'm delighted that the governor is really making climate action, something that she wants to deliver on. As everyone in this room knows, New York is mandated by law to achieve 70% renewable energy by 2030 and 100% clean energy by 2040. And that's not very far away. We want to start by saying that there's getting to these goals is really ambitious. It's hard. Not everybody realizes how hard that is, right? It's going to take a lot of work. And they're ambitious because, as the governor noted, climate crisis is not in the future. It is something we are experiencing today. It is on our collective doorstep, right? We heard Mario talk about it, all the weather situations. We heard Ali talk about it. We heard the governor talk about it, how she used to see the orange skies in Buffalo. Well, this summer we saw orange skies here in New York City, right? We had these massive wildfires. We've had extreme flooding all over this state, and we have record-shattering heat yet again. That's why today's announcement is so important. It's a concrete step towards achieving the clean energy future that we need. That means an additional 4 gigawatts of offshore wind energy, an additional 2.2 gigawatts of sources from onshore wind and solar and hydro. That is a lot of power. 2.2 million homes of clean energy is an amazing feat. New Yorkers deserve cleaner air and a respite from pollution caused by dirty fossil fuels, in particular in disadvantaged neighborhoods, because our planet and our public health demands nothing less. The challenges, however, are real. Our entire economy, including the renewable energy sector, is facing unprecedented economic conditions. Industry, government, and advocates must work together to deliver on large-scale renewable energy projects. We can't forget that there is a huge cost of inaction, costs that put our families at risk from pollution and climate threats. And today's awards puts us one step closer to achieving the clean energy future we all need, but there is more work to be done. Today's announcement builds off of the renewable energy projects that are installed or in the pipeline, equivalent to 66% of the 2030 statewide energy load. These are projects that have shovels in the ground and barges in the water and must continue to be a priority. One of the first events I had the privilege of going to with the governor was at the groundbreaking for South Fork Wind in East Hampton. That's a project that faced its own adversity, and yet is nearly now complete, because labor leaders like Gary and John and Maddie and Mario and my environmental colleagues like Adrian Esposito and the Citizens Campaign for the Environment, we all came together in unanimous support to move these projects forward. Because no one ever said that tackling the climate crisis was going to be easy. But I know that I'm grateful that in the face of adversity, we have a governor who does not bend and who does not buckle, but instead builds. Because we won't meet our climate and clean energy goals if we only talk about clean energy. We need to deliver on that promise, and I'm so excited to hear you talk about the fact that we need the will and that you have the will to make sure that we're going to achieve these goals, and thank you very much for that. That's why I'm confident that Governor Hochul and Doreen Harris are two leaders that we can count on to lead New York to a clean energy future, and today marks another step forward in achieving that. So thank you so much for all that we're doing. This is a huge announcement on how we're going to advance clean energy, and I know my partner, former colleague, this is what happens when you don't write it down, my former colleague and my friend, Ann Reynolds, the executive director of the ACE, Alliance for Clean Energy, ACE New York, Ann Reynolds.
Apparently, Julie and I need to have a talk about something. Yeah, exactly. Hello and good morning. It's great to be here for some happy news and a great occasion. I very much appreciate the invitation, Governor, although I also would like to be invited back for the fireworks, so I don't know who was in charge of that. A little bit of a different angle on our celebration today. I wanted to reflect that as we stand here today, there's a lot of world events that are tragic and frightening. The crisis in Israel is particularly top of mind. We all know that this is a tragedy of this magnitude has repercussions in so many different ways, and it's an immediate question of war and peace and a humanitarian crisis. It's very personal for many New Yorkers, but these events also have implications for energy policy. On October 9th, the Wall Street Journal had an article headlined, "Oil and Natural Gas Prices Climb After Israel-Hamas War Erupts." And on October 18th again, "Oil Rises as Fighting in Gaza Intensifies." So I mention these price pressures, they're yet another reason why this transition to clean, renewable electricity is good for New York and good for New Yorkers. It isn't only about demonstrating leadership on how to fight climate change, although you've heard how important that is. It isn't only about creating jobs that are family-sustaining, safe, union jobs, since we need to modernize our energy system anyway. It isn't only because the more renewable energy we use, the less fossil fuel we need, and the cleaner the air will be. It's also that relying more on renewable energy means hedging against these price spikes and protecting affordability. All of these compelling motivations notwithstanding, though, it's not easy. And even though our legislature told us we have to have 70% renewable electricity by 2030, it's not easy. We will, on occasion, disagree on how to get this done. And even when we do all agree, and we've seen great progress, and we feel poised to embark on a construction boom, world events can slow us down, whether a pandemic-induced economic hurricane or a real hurricane. There will be setbacks. But then again, we all try to teach our children that's what is important is not that bad things happen, but how you handle them. And this week, Governor Hochul and her great energy policy team are handling these challenges by staying committed. So it's great news for the companies that won contracts today. But it's also great news that the governor and the state of New York are following through on this energy transition, as evidenced by today's news and following through in a big way. And also the recent commitment to an accelerated RFP for additional wind and solar projects. So, on behalf of the renewable energy industry, we sincerely appreciate this continued commitment to this ambitious energy transition. And to the folks that won contracts, all members of the Alliance for Clean Energy, congratulations. This is big. You've had to do so much to get these projects where they are today. But remember, when these projects are up and running, when they've created great jobs, they're making power for all of us to use with no pollution and no fossil fuel susceptible to instability around the world or price spikes, then we will all be winners. Thank you so much.